everybody. How's it going? Ben Gothard here, founder and CEO of Gothard Enterprises and author of CEO at 20, a little book for big dreams. And today, I want to drop some more knowledge bombs on you, my friends. I want to specifically talk about a book that I just read. Well, technically, I listened to it, but it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, I really, really like this book, okay? And let me just preface this whole review, I guess you could say, by saying that this book is phenomenal to help people open up their mind to the possibilities of entrepreneurship, right? This book was meant for people who are working in the 9 to 5. They're in what's called the rat race, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and they want to get out of it, okay? So Robert Kiyosaki, in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has both a rich dad and a poor dad, right? So his biological father is his poor dad. Now, this man is very well educated. He has a ton of degrees. He's gone to college. He has all sorts of accredited university experience, right? So he is the poor dad because he is always struggling with money. He can never consistently build up enough wealth to be considered rich, right? So he's the poor dad. The rich dad, on the other hand, is one of his really good friend Mike's father. Now, the rich dad maybe got an 8th grade education. I believe it was an 8th grade education that he got. He didn't go to high school. He didn't attend college, and yet he was abundantly wealthy. He had plenty of money, and so those are that's the rich dad and the poor dad, right? And so it's interesting to see what Kiyosaki was trying to say. The author was trying to say that education does not necessarily lead to wealth, whereas if you have more financial literacy, you can become more wealthy by doing that. So let's start off with the first of my 7 takeaways from this book. Now, the first takeaway is that the rich don't work for money. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the rich don't work for money actually means a few different things, okay? The first being simply that the most wealthy people do not trade their time for money, aka they do not work a job for an hourly pay, okay? You can go to McDonald's and you can work for minimum wage, $7.50 per hour, and you know if you work for a certain amount of time, you're going to get a certain amount of money, okay? And what Kiyosaki was saying in his book is, by doing that, you will never become wealthy. You will never become rich because you're trading your time for money, right? There's also another way to interpret that. The rich don't work for money. When Kiyosaki says the rich don't work for money, he means that the rich make money work for them, okay? What does that mean, right? It's so easy to say, yes, I'm going to make money work for me, but what does that actually mean, right? That means making investments. That when you invest $1, that dollar is then making more dollars for you, and that money is working for you, right? Kiyosaki says to think about each dollar in your bank account as an employee of yours. And just like a good employee, you want that employee to make you more money, right? You want that dollar to make you more dollars. So it's an interesting concept shift from one, not trading your time for money, not working an hourly job, but figuring out how to make money work for you, right? So then there's this catch-22, right? How can you make money work for you if you don't have any money to begin with? Okay, and so to that he says, yes, sometimes you're gonna have to trade your time for money in the beginning, right? Most people do. Most people just don't have this insane inheritance or this pile of cash sitting in the under their bed. Most people just don't have that. So in the beginning, yeah, it's probably going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of working, of trading your time for money in order to get to a position where you can invest that money and then make your money work for you. You don't want to be a slave to money, okay? You don't want to be a slave to money. You want to work to live. You do not want to live to work. At least in my opinion, I don't think people were made to sit at a desk for 9 or 10 hours a day and just whittle away and just be there. People need to be outside. We need to be talking to other people. We need to be living life, especially in our younger days. I mean, I'm 22 years old. if anybody out there that's listening is around my age, this is our time. This is the time for us to go travel the world, to figure out who we are, to learn what it is that we want to do with our lives. It's not a time to be stuck behind a desk or working for 10 hours to make minimum wage. I mean, that drives me crazy. That absolutely drives me crazy to know that people are doing that. And if that works for you, then fine. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong. It's your opinion. It's your life. You do what you want to do. But that's not how I want to live. I want to travel the world. I want to experience it. So the first takeaway is that the rich don't work for money, right? They don't trade their time for money, and they make their money work for them. The second biggest takeaway is that financial literacy is hugely important, yet it is not taught in schools, right? When was the last time you had a class on money, on investing $1 in order to make back $1.01? When was the last time you actually had a class like that? When was the last time you went to school and you figured out, how am I going to build assets? Or for that matter, learn the difference between an asset and a liability, right? That is one humongous reason why Kiyosaki says most people stay either in the lower middle class or they are in poverty for most of their lives, is because they don't understand the difference between an asset and a liability, right? And so he tries to dumb it down to the most basic building block that it possibly could be broken down to, right? An asset is something that makes you money. A liability is something that costs you money. Okay, so what is an actual asset, right? Let's say you invest in a stock, and that stock pays you a dividend every quarter or every year, right? You have put your money into something that is now giving you money back. So you're putting your money into something, and that's generating more money. That is an asset. When you invest in something that is going to then create more wealth for you, that is an asset. Whereas, in contrast, a liability is something that you put your money into and it takes money out of your pocket, right? So let's say a car, for example. Now, if you're selling cars, it's a totally different story, right? If you're buying a car, fixing it up, and selling it, you're investing your money, and then that becomes an asset because you're fixing it up and you're selling it for more money. But let's just say you're buying a car, and what most people do is they buy a car and they drive it off the lot, and it loses, I don't know, 10 or 20% of the value immediately when you take it off of the lot, right? And then over the years, you pay off the car, and it's taking money out of your bank account, right? That is a liability, because more than likely, you're not going to be using that car to make money. Yes, you're using that car to get from place to place. You could take the bus if you really needed to. You could ride a bike if you really needed to. That's not the point of this. The point is to make the distinction between an asset and a liability, right? So an asset is something that makes you money. A liability is something that costs you money, okay? So again, the first one is that the rich don't work for money. The second one is that financial literacy is important, right? It's a study. It's a study of money, right? Money has a language. Money has different rules that if you don't know them, you're going to get burned by them, right? So let's think about the first time you played basketball or the first time you watched basketball. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to get a foul, right? Like you're not going to know to dribble the ball constantly. You're not going to know that you can't take more than 2 steps without shooting a layup. So you're going to get called for it. You're not going to know what to do. Money's the same way. If you're just trying to exist and not educate yourself about how money works and about how to make money, about how to budget, how to effectively deal with your money, how to manage your money, you're going to get burned. And you may get lucky for a little while, but in the long run, it's not going to work out for you, right? So if you educate yourself earlier and become financially literate, then you're setting yourself up for future success, right? And that is a real struggle. That's a real challenge, and I'll tell you why. Most universities, and actually it starts sooner. Very few high schools or middle schools teach anything about money. They just don't. They don't teach you how to pay taxes. They don't teach you how to create a budget. They don't teach you how to go and use coupons to save money. or how to do any of those things that are super important when you're trying to save money. When you're working and you're making money, that's great. That's one stream of income, okay? But you're then having to pay off all this money for all these different things. If you're financially literate, it's being the most effective with the money that you have, right? Just because you get up to a certain level of income, that's not going to automatically equate to you becoming wealthy. You have to know what to do with that income, right? Let's say, just as an example, that you're bringing in $100,000 every year, but you're spending $90,000 every year. You're only really bringing in $10,000 every single year. Whereas if you're bringing in $50,000 in revenue, but you're only spending $35,000, at the end of the year, you have $15,000, and the person that's generating $100,000 in revenue is only taking home $10,000. It's not, at the end of the day, it matters what you keep. It matters what you can spend, right? And that's one point that Kiyosaki makes. So the third one that I want to talk about, the third takeaway from this book, is to mind your own business, right? And I thought that was really funny when I first read it. I was like, okay, there's got to be some joke here. Well, he actually brought up a really good point. There's a huge difference between going and working at a job and minding your own business, right? So when you are minding your own business, think of it like tending to your own business, right? You need something that you can put money into that will generate you more money, right? And for every person, it's going to be different. There's not one cure-all to this, right? But your business needs to be something that okay, I can put in $1 and I can get out at least $1.01. At least $1.01, right? That's minding your business. Having a vehicle that is, and if you still have a job, that's totally fine, right? This is a vehicle outside of a 9 to 5 that you can invest either your time or your money into, and that will accumulate and generate money for you, right? So it's important to mind your own business, and why is that? Okay, you may be thinking, no, I just want to go get a 9 to 5. I don't want to have my own business. I don't need it. I don't want to worry about it. That's not my thing. Okay, what happens if you get fired? What happens if the company that you're at goes bankrupt? What happens if the market crashes and they have to lay off 500 people from your company? You need to have some sort of safety net, right? One of the biggest things that people always tell me being an entrepreneur is, well, do you have a backup plan? What about safety? What about that steady paycheck? Well, look at it from the opposite side. Look at it from the flip side. If you're working a 9 to 5, you're not dictating your own life. You're not in control of your own business, because your boss can say, sorry, bud, but you're fired, right? So it's minding your own business, just having something else that is a vehicle for you to either invest your time and money that can create money for you, okay? That's minding your own business. Now, the cool thing about this is that it doesn't have to be a 40-hour-a-week thing, right? If you put in a little bit of time here and there, mind your business, tend to your business, build something like a side project, a side hustle, whatever you want to call it. Put in a few hours every single week. Be consistent. An hour a day, that's fine. That's fine. I get it. Life is happening. We're living life, right? Especially if you're going to work a 9 to 5. I mean, you're working 8 hours a day. You're coming home. You have to sleep at some point. You have to eat. You probably want to socialize with other people. You have family. You have this, that. You have errands and all the other things. So it's hard to make time for this. But think about later down the road the rewards of having something, a true asset, right, that you're building, right? Remember what we talked about assets not too long ago, of building up assets, right? You want to build assets. You don't want to build liabilities. Building that business, minding your own business, tending to your own business, that is creating an asset for you, right? And you don't always have to put in the money to do it. A lot of the times it just takes time, right? So again, the first principle is the rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. The second is that financial literacy is extremely important, because if you don't know how to play the game, you're going to get burned. The third is to mind your own business, tend to your own business, create your own business, build assets, right? So the fourth thing that he brought up that I truly had no idea of before this book was the history of taxes. Okay? Now I know what you all are thinking. Oh my gosh, I don't want to hear about taxes. Taxes are super boring. Okay? Well, taxes happen to be one of the biggest expenses that you may have to pay for in your life, right? So if you're living in the United States, taxes are humongous, right? So income tax, just for example, is probably one of the bigger expenses that you're going to have to pay for in your life, right? But where did taxes actually come from? How did they come about? Where did they come from? Because back in colonial times, there actually were no taxes. They would only tax people, they would only tax the citizens if there was wartime, right? There was a tax enacted during the Civil War, and that was one of the few times in history before the early 1900s where the United States actually had taxes. So he brings up a really good point. Okay, where did taxes come from? Why are they there? And what he says is the reason, and again, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm saying this is what Kiyosaki talks about in his book, about the history of taxes. But he said that taxes came about because there were a lot of people in poverty. And there were a very few people at the top who had accumulated most of the wealth, right? In the early 1900s, there was Vanderbilt, there was Rockefeller, there was Carnegie, all these people, these families with monstrous amounts of wealth at the top. And so the normal citizens wanted to take money from the most wealthy and distribute it amongst the people. And that's how it started, right? The taxes were just on the wealthy people. That's how it started, right? Well, eventually, the government started to rely more and more on these taxes. And so instead of just taxing the very wealthy, they then started taxing the middle class. And then eventually they trickled down and started taxing everybody, right? And so what was interesting was that what started off as the lower class, the impoverished people trying to tax the wealthy people, turned into everybody getting taxed, and the wealthy people figuring out how to play the game and not paying as much tax. I mean, it is crazy to me to think that the very thing that these people were trying to prevent, these people were trying to affect, it backfired on them completely. So what's interesting is how the wealthy people do it, okay? And so Kiyosaki talks about, and this is one of the most important pieces of the book, okay? This is one of the gems of this book that very few people actually know about, and very few people actually take this lesson and use it to their advantage, okay? But what Kiyosaki was saying was that the wealthiest people leverage businesses, okay? So what is a business? A business is a legal document, right? Like an LLC, it's a limited liability company. That is a legal document that you can file. That doesn't mean anything unless you give it meaning, right? So unless you put assets into that company's onto that company's balance sheet, they're not gonna. It's not like a thing. It's just a legal document, right? So what the wealthy do is they give assets to a company, right? So the company owns these assets. The company's generating money, and as the company's generating money, the company then expenses a certain amount of money, and then they get taxed on what's left. And it is brilliant because let's say you're bringing in $80,000 in revenue, and you expense out on that same business $75,000 of revenue. Well, instead of being taxed on that $80,000, they're getting taxed on the $5,000 that's left over because they've expensed the $75,000 out of that $80,000, right? So again, this is one of the things that Kiyosaki says defines how wealthy you're going to be, is how well you know the system, right? If you know how taxes work, you can make more informed decisions, you are going to consistently make better decisions than most people. And when you consistently make better decisions than more people or most people, then you're going to consistently have better results than most people. And over a lifetime of doing that, you can become wealthy. And it's a choice, right? It's a choice. You have to educate yourself on these important things of money. And once you know them, it's either it's are you going to do them or are you not going to do them, right? So again, being wealthy is a choice. Either you choose to learn how to become wealthy and you do it, or you don't do it. Or you choose not to learn how to become wealthy and you won't, right? So that's the thing that Kiyosaki's trying to say, is that it's not impossible. People do it every single day. There are more millionaires now than ever before, right? So what he's saying is, in order to become one of those millionaires, in order to become rich, you just have to learn how to do it. And he's telling you how to do it in this book. He's telling you exactly what he does to become wealthy, right? So again, that's like the history of taxes and how he uses taxes to keep a ton of money, right? And these are the things that the wealthiest of people do, and they actually probably do it to a bigger scale than we can even think of right now, right? So that is the fourth takeaway that I want to talk about. The fifth one is to hire people that are smarter than you. Okay. Now you may think it sounds a little backwards, right? If somebody's smarter than you, then why should you be hiring them? They should be hiring you, right? Well, it's just not the case, right? Because somebody who is very intelligent in one specific area, they're very specialized, right? Like think a doctor, think a surgeon. They're typically going to want to specialize because they can make more money, right? But if you're a business owner and you can get knowledge from this specialized individual and this specialized individual and this specialized individual, right? Then you're taking a little bit of input from all these specialized individuals, so you're getting the best of the best, okay? So that's what he's saying when he talks about hiring people that are smarter than you, right? And it makes sense, because the people that are smarter than you are more than likely going to know what to do when you have a very specific question that they are smarter than you in. And again, it's not that they're smarter than you overall, right? And they might be, but it's that they're smarter than you in a very specific niche, very, very specific small region. And it's that region of knowledge, that body of knowledge that they've been developing and that they're specialized in. That's what you want to ask them about. So you want to, let's say you have 10 different buckets that you need to understand in order to become successful. Well, then you need to ask 10 people who are way better than you at each individual bucket, and you need to get that one person's opinion on that one bucket and then move on, right? And so you want to have 10 different individuals that you can ask about for all those 10 different buckets. So again, hire people that are smarter than you. It may sound a little backwards, but you can do it. There's no rules against it, right? If you can do it, you can do it, right? And once you figure out how to do it once, you can just repeat these things. So I think one of the biggest overarching themes of this book, and what I've come to truly understand in my time as an entrepreneur, is that once you learn how to do these things, once you master these things, they stick with you forever, right? Because you're acquiring knowledge that when you put to use, it's done. You've acquired that knowledge. You know how to do it. So once you figure out how to do it, then you just have to do it, right? So again, it's about acquiring the knowledge to become wealthy, and then choosing whether or not you want to do that, right? And it's not a mystery. It may be a mystery to you now, but it does not have to be a mystery. There are people who know how to do it. There are people who are doing it, right? So you have to gain that knowledge, talk to the right people, read the right books, study the right things. But you can acquire that knowledge, and then it's a choice. Either I want to become wealthy or I don't. Either I want to put in the work to become wealthy or I don't want to put in the work. But you can do it. There's nothing stopping you besides, whatever it is that's stopping you. And I can't tell you exactly what's stopping you. Everybody has their own limiting beliefs. I still have limiting beliefs. I deal with them every day. I struggle with them every day. Now, I'm trying to overcome them, and I try very hard every single day. But there's nothing that's stopping either of us, right? Or any of us, all of us, from acquiring the things that we want to acquire, doing the things that we want to do, and becoming the people that we want to become. So I went a little bit on a tangent, but I think it's important, so I'm going to support my tangent going off on. So anyways, the next principle that I want to talk about is the fact that Kiyosaki says work to learn, not to earn. Okay? Again, sounds a little backwards. It really does. But what he's saying is that if you are going to work for somebody else, it's more important that you work for them in order to learn a skill or in order to acquire knowledge in a very specific region or a very specific subject than it is to actually earn money from them. Because again, your chances are you're not going to become wealthy by working for somebody else. But you can go work for somebody else to learn what they're doing and go from company to company, position to position, learn the things that you need to learn in order to become wealthy, and then do it. There's nothing stopping you from doing that, right? You're providing a service, you're getting paid for it, but you're also gaining knowledge from doing it. Okay? And there's nothing against the rule books that says that you can't choose the companies that you want to work for based on the skills that you want to acquire and take those skills and do the things in life that you want to do. In fact, that's exactly what Kiyosaki is saying. He's saying, go work for, if you do want to work for companies. Now, you may not want to work for anybody. That's great. Go learn from them still. You can still learn from how the best players in the world do it, right? So what he's saying is work to learn, not to earn. Okay, work to learn, not to earn. And it's a really important concept. And then the last takeaway from this book is that in life, you're going to have to overcome obstacles. It's just a fact of life. You are absolutely going to have to overcome obstacles in your life. And you do it every day, right? You do it every single day. If you need to get from point A to point B, you overcome that obstacle. You get in the car and go, or you walk, or you get on your bike, or you get on the bus. You're a good problem solver. You do it every single day. You're very capable of doing it. We're all capable of doing it because we're human beings. We're intelligent creatures. We can figure things out. We can overcome these obstacles. But the obstacles that people don't take the time to overcome are the financial obstacles, right? Because they think, oh, I can never do it. Oh, I can never become wealthy. I can't. And you know what? That is just not true. That is absolutely not true. Every single one of us has the potential to become wealthy. Every single one of us has the potential to become wealthy. But we have to overcome these obstacles, right? And it's all in our head, right? Now clearly, there are a very few extreme circumstances, okay? If you were born with some sort of physical impairment, there are some things that you will not be able to do, okay? There are some things, and I recognize that. But for the majority of individuals on this planet, we all have the ability to become wealthy, and more importantly, to chase our dreams and to accomplish our dreams. We all have that power. We are all capable of doing that. It is a decision. It is a decision of whether or not we want to put in the effort to accomplish those things that we want or not, right? And I'll tell you this, most people are not going to do it. Most people are gonna say, I have this dream, but there's no way that I'm going to do it. And the second that you say that there's no way that I'm going to be able to do something is the second that you are correct. You're setting yourself up for failure. If you think, I can do this, I'm going to do this, I don't know how, I don't know when, but I'm going to figure out a way to do this, then you're going to do it. Because you're going to overcome those obstacles. And there are going to be obstacles, there always will be. But if you have it in your mind that you're going to overcome those obstacles, and it doesn't matter what life throws at you, but you're still going to do everything that you need to do to overcome these obstacles, then you're going to be successful, regardless of what success looks like to you. So I challenge each and every one of you to figure out what those obstacles are. Figure out what they are. Write them down. It may be a lot easier to overcome than you think. So hopefully this has been helpful for everybody that's listening. Again, these have been my 7 takeaways from Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I would highly encourage everybody to read this book because Kiyosaki is very smart. I mean, he's just an intelligent man. He's made a ton of money in his life, and he's very smart. His book is a way for you to get inside his head, for you to see the things that he's trying to teach you, right? And there's nothing better than the original. I can give you the takeaways and my thoughts on it, but again, I highly encourage you to read this book. One, because reading's awesome, and it always helps to read more. You can expand your mind, you can learn. But he really goes into the details of actually how to do these things. I highly encourage you to check out Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and you guys have a fantastic